In this video, I'm going to be discussing, as well as giving you part numbers and measurements for the two different input shafts for a T96 3-speed manual transmission. And this could be with or possibly without the overdrive. So this is a T96 with the overdrive and the long housing. I think this was used by Ford, but the overdrive actually only goes to about here. This whole area here is empty. I think that's just so it would fit directly with in place of an automatic transmission. I think the Ford-O-Matic transmission has this long shaft. But anyways, there's another version of the T96 where the housing just goes up to here. Consequently, the output shaft is only about here. There's a nice little T96. This is a 3-speed standard without the overdrive. And it's a tiny and very simple little thing. You have an idea of how small it is, but it's still very heavy duty. Very easy to install one of these, by the way. So moving on to the input shafts. As you can probably see, the diameters of the splines, where the spline goes, is exactly the same. And it is 10 splines. Both of them have 10 splines, and it's a 1-inch diameter shaft. The gears are exactly the same. Now our differences are in the length. So the length of this shoulder, the smaller shoulder, is about approximately 1.2 inches, and the length of the big shoulder is approximately 2 inches. And then I measured from here to there, from the bearing shoulder to there. That's about 6 inches on the smaller one, on the shorter one, and a 6 5/8 on the longer one. Oops, sorry, I was measuring it there. And overall, there. Now, what really matters is the diameter of the ends, of the tips, because this goes into the flywheel bushing. So the reason why my bearing went bad, or my input shaft bearing went bad, is because I had this shaft in, and because the diameter was too small, it was just wobbling all around because there wasn't the flywheel bushing to hold it in place. This should be the correct one for my application. But I think based on this comparison, there must be different flywheel bushings, different setups out there. But anyways, the outer diameter of this shaft on the end is 0.62 inches. And on this one, on the bigger one, it's 0.75 inches, or pretty much 3/4. So moving on from that, here are 3 input shaft bearings that I have. They all have different part numbers, and they're from different manufacturers, but they're all exactly the same. This one is part of the one that went bad, so the wheels or the balls completely disintegrated and went bad, so I only have part of it. Starting from this one, that's an MRC G207M, and 207 is the actual part number, or 207M. So as you can see, this one also has a 207 in it, and this one also has the 207 in it, although it's listed as 6207. So this one is a Federal 1207 CG, and this one is the brand new one that I bought from Rock Auto for $30. It's an SKF 6207 NRJ. And the NRJ is for the... It means that this bearing has a groove for a snap ring. So actually, guys, if I just search up a bearing 6207, I'll get a plain bearing without the groove for the snap ring. So in other words, no snap ring. And believe it or not, I found one on Rock Auto for like $3, a little under $3. I think it was like $2.60. They're exactly the same outer diameter, same inner diameter, same width. They're exactly the same, the only difference being the groove. Now, supposedly these are hardened steel, so it's very hard for you to machine the groove if you have a lathe. But I'm sure it's possible somehow, but it's a lot more difficult, a lot more work. But anyways, those are the differences. And this part number seems to be the most common one, 6207 NRJ. And the reason the snap ring is important is because it keeps the bearing in place, but in an emergency, and if we had to, we could get away with just having a plain bearing. And I called a local industrial supply store, and all the industrial or standard bearings don't have snap rings in them. The snap rings are an automotive thing. I really think we could do without the bearing, because there's not really, the way it's set up in the transmission doesn't really have the option to move in and out. But I guess if there's no snap ring, see, the snap ring rests on the face of the transmission like that. So any force from the input shaft, say my finger's the input shaft here, is going to get distributed onto the bearing and then onto the face of the transmission, which is very heavy cast iron. Whereas if we don't have the snap ring, it would pass through the bearing and into this part here, into the needle rings, bearings, into this part of the input shaft. And maybe that could cause problems, I don't know. But anyways, that's how it's set up. So they had the correct bearing. It's more expensive, but I think some of them were a bit more expensive, different manufacturer. But also, there was another one that was 6207 NJ without, I think it didn't have the R, something like that. It's almost the same, and it's a direct interchange. I don't know what the difference. Yeah, it's an NJ. It was an NJ instead of NRJ. Not too sure what the difference is there, but the measurements all match up from what Rock Auto gave me, and I actually measured it with the vernier, and it's all correct. So for the outer diameter is 2.8346 inches. And that a fourth decimal place is not really necessary. And then for the inner diameter, it's 1.378 inches, and the width is 0.6693 inches. Or I actually got it to 0.67. So 0.669 rounds up to 0.670 inches. So, and finally, I'm going to give you a part number for the rear bearing. So there's a rear bearing there. It's a little bit smaller than the front one. And in this case, it happens to be a Fafner. That's kind of an R. 206 kg. I don't know if I can kind of zoom in just for you guys to see it on the bearing itself. I'm not giving you a inaccurate information. There it is. Never heard of that manufacturer. But yeah, I think that's. I am gonna have to put a ring. It's like a big washer to blocks the face of the bearings that the oil doesn't leak out. There's no seal on these transmissions. There's no rubber seal. It's just the washer that rides on the face of the bearing and keeps the oil out. Oh, those are the little needle bearings, by the way. I accidentally dropped them out before doing the video. I should say. So yeah, I hope that helps.